Hello and welcome back to A Year of Miracles. We are on lesson 49. Lesson 49 says, God's voice speaks to me all through the day. This lesson teaches us that God's voice constantly communicates with us, offering us guidance, love, and peace. However, we often do not hear it because our minds are cluttered with ego driven thoughts. By quieting our minds and being open, we can recognize and trust this divine inner voice. So you are never without divine guidance. It is always available. Fear, doubt, and distractions make it seem like you are alone, but in truth, you are always connected to God's wisdom. When you listen with an open heart, you receive messages of love, reassurance, and direction. God's voice gently leads you toward truth and away from fear if you are willing to listen. I just had a thought then which just made me laugh because it's not like some man, the perception of God, some man is in your ear going, walk this way, do this, do that. It's not like that. It's not like that. Remember, you are an essence of God, so that voice that you hear is a whisper of of your voice, a loving, nurturing, soft, delicate, elegant version of your voice. And it's so gentle and it's so divine, and it's always guiding you and it's always giving you clarity, but we suffocate it with the voices and the noise of the ego. Here I said voices then, because there are many, many versions um of our ego, right? I always say the ego is just different aspects of ourselves. So we've got the fear-driven ego, we've got the I'm not good enough ego, we've got the all of the different versions. And so those thoughts that we hear that are limiting us, that are making us feel shit, that are taking us away from our divine light and love, are not who we really are. And so it's using the power of our awareness to, like we've said before, like Karina said, the clouds, right? Let the clouds just pass. And like I've said before, don't bite the bait, right? Literally, those thoughts are just wanting you to go and latch onto. It's not to, it's to be the observer and know that that is not who you really are. Eventually, the more you do this work, those voices and those thoughts dissolve until you're so connected. Well, until you're so connected to your divine essence, you don't even have thoughts. By the way, I've been to that place and it's so divine. Until Eckhart Tolle says, you get to this divine place where there are no thoughts, and then you realize that there are no thoughts, and then the thoughts are back. It's like a trick. You find this bliss state, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is so bliss. And then you realize you're not judging, but you're using thought to recognize that you're in this bliss state. So then you take yourself out of the bliss state. And so we digress. But this is just allowing us to connect back to that we are never alone. We are never alone, even though we might feel like that. There is always this infinite intelligence source this ketchup tomato sauce with us no matter where we go, and to understand that that essence is a loving guidance that is always guiding us and is always supporting us, and like Karina says, like guiding us to the path of least resistance, wanting us to have an effortless life, wanting us to have everything that we desire. It's only the ego that doesn't want that tries to limit us and keep us small and keep us away from the truth of who we really are.
Yeah. I like your description of ego, and something arose for me while you were saying that. You can think of the ego and the thoughts that arise from the ego. You can think of the ego like AI, right? So the AI, the way that it gathers information, you enter a little search result, whatever. And then what it does is it searches all information that has access to from like everything on the web. I don't know exactly how it works. I'm not an expert in AI, but I imagine, it's searching like all the websites on the that's available on the web, all the information, and it picks bits and pieces and puts something together and creates whatever the answer that you were asking for. So it's kind of like that because you have all these little snapshots, all these little parts, all this little data. So like on a Tuesday when you were 3 years old and you wanted to buy that candy cane and your mom said, no, we can't afford that. Boop. That's a little snapshot. Okay, now you're 14 years old and your teacher said that you were a disappointment in the way you did your homework. Oops, that's a little snapshot. So think of it like all the different websites where AI is gathering its information from. So now you're going and you're approaching a situation, and like AI, it's gathering all this information from all these little snapshots, from all these things that you've like data you've picked up throughout your life, and then it creates an answer for you, right? And so it's made up of all these parts. It's not actually like Samantha was saying. So that analogy came up of the AI, so I wanted to share that. Um, yeah, so God's voice speaks to me all through the day. So when I teach about our true nature and I teach about the illusion of the human and the ego, I use an analogy of the koshas, which again is just another story. So this is the Course in Miracles, and the biblical language is a frame or a story in which to point to truth. And there's a million other stories and frames in which to put this, and they're based on like the cultures that they came from. So one story or framework in which we could put this to differentiate between illusion and truth is the koshas, and it's this idea of these five bodies. So I'm bringing this up because it can help put some perspective on this. So we have the ego mind. So the three illusory dualistic bodies are the mind, the emotions, and the physical, right? The mental body, the emotional, and the physical. And then we have the body of wisdom, Christ consciousness, the effortless being. And this is wisdom. This is God's wisdom. This is where God's voice comes from, right? So this is when we enter into our the beginning stages of seeing our true nature. So it's the body of wisdom and then the body of bliss. So it's that bliss, joy, love, etc. And then this wisdom, this infinite wisdom. So you can look at all of that as reflections of our true nature as God, as the infinite being. So, so this infinite wisdom is available to you at all times. Just like we talked about this white light, the sun, this infinite wisdom is coming from this from this what I call the body of wisdom, but you can think of it as this mind of wisdom. It's not the human mind. It's not this human mind. It's the infinite mind, the infinite intelligence, this infinite mind. And it's always available and it's always going to be guiding you in peace and love and calm. And then what happens is we enter into the human mind, the ego mind, and it get that constant stream that's always available like the sun gets drowned out by all this little mind chatter. It's distracted, it's disorganized, it's uncertain, it's distraught, it's frantic. And so you can tell whether you're in the ego mind because of those things that it's identified with, right? Distractedness, disorganized, uncertain, frantic, always like, oh my gosh, blah, 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 blah. Or if it's coming from that body of wisdom or God's mind, which is calm, certain, restful, effortless, peaceful, loving. It's a certain loving guidance. And what happens, and I'll use my little ball again. Because I used to say, follow your expansion, alchemize your contraction. I don't quite say that anymore, but this is a good analogy because I would say, when it's coming from this place of intuition of the body of wisdom of God's mind of God's voice, because when it comes through it feels expansive, it feels ex infinitely expansive even, right? It feels expansive, but what will happen is seconds later the ego mind comes in, it goes, well, blah, 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 and then you can feel that contraction, that density, that yeah, that dense contraction feeling, right? So that's how you can tell um because if something comes through and it feels expansive, but then then it gets distracted. Then it gets what was the word I was using? Drowned out. Then it switches direction and becomes contracted. Then you know that the ego mind has come in and added its own little narrative to what has come through. Because, for instance, here's the example I used to use because sometimes it feels like you get an idea, right? Oh, I'm going to apply for this job I've always wanted. I'm going to apply to this company I've always wanted to work at. And all of a sudden it's like, boom, it's like this intuitive, like, yes. And then, and then the ego mind will come in and go, no, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden it goes, shh. And then what you will say many times is, oh, I'm not aligned to it yet. Oh, you know, um, intuitively, you'll say this, it's not true. Intuitively, it's not feeling right. But it's not that. It's your ego that's come in. It actually is aligned. It actually is coming from God. It actually is coming from wisdom. But it's that secondary ego thought that came in and was like, no, actually, blah, 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 you're not good enough. The fear comes in, right? And then you start to mush it all together and go, oh, okay, well, that must not be for me right now. Oh, that opportunity must not be aligned. Oh, um, actually, again, whatever stories you come up with, but no, but that's not exactly what's happening. So anyway, going off on a little tangent. Um, so yeah, don't let yourself identify or listen to the ego. Identify with what's coming through in that stillness, in that peace, and in that expansion. So to practice this for today, you're going to want to spend about 5 minutes per practice period and try to have about 4 practice periods today and just listen in silence. Sit in silence, sit in stillness. Your mind's going to be going. The more you try to stop thought, the louder and more chattier it's going to get. It's just funny how that works. But sit in silence. Move past those ego thoughts, move past that chatter, and try to find your way back to that space of pure calm where you can hear God's voice, Source's voice, that infinite body of wisdom. And then for some shorter practice periods, you're going to repeat the idea often. God's voice speaks to me all through the day. And you're going to do it if you need to with your eyes open, but when you have the opportunity to with your eyes closed, and invite God's voice to speak to you. And that's all I have.
I love that. I love that you said as well about I know you said you don't use it anymore, but I was like, I really love that about expansion and then contracting to alchemize because that's so true. It's basically like you're coming back to understand what your limits are, to then be aware of them, to alchemize them, and then zoom back out again. It's just this constant, like the hokey cokey. Do you have that in the wherever you're from? Where are you from? It's like in, out, shake it all about, isn't it? Okay, amazing. That's so good. Would you say, because obviously I said that God's thoughts to me sound like a fainter version of my voice. Would you say that's the same for you? Or do you actually hear like anything different? Just because I'm just sharing my experience, but it's good for others to hear your experience as well.
I don't I don't know if I've really noticed if it's in my voice or not. I have yeah. Um yeah, it's not loud. Like sometimes you can hear your own voice and it's like loud. It's more calm than that. Like I don't even notice the voice. It's just kind of like comes through.
Yeah, it's like, and it's almost like it doesn't come from where normal sound comes from or
Yeah,
normal thought arises. It comes
yeah,
from a different place.
yeah.
But I've recognized that it's my voice that I hear, but from a different place that doesn't feel like it's connected to where my usual thoughts come from.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can't say one thing or another about the actual voice, but yeah, I agree
Yeah,
with that part
you're
definitely.
going to be like this now. Karina, are you there? Well, let us know in the comments if you feel like you've heard but yeah, because it's a reminder, it's not that there's technically nothing outside of you, right? So it is your voice. So don't think that like God's calling you and you're going to hear this random voice speak to you in your mind. Because
Extremely me.
if it does, it's likely you've got an intruder. Right? So yeah, for me, I'm like, I don't listen to anyone else's voice unless it's my own. But yeah, let us know in the comments what you because it's the same as people call it intuition. I do think there's that connection, isn't there, with what people call intuition, your soul whispering to you, and then it's for me it's all one and the same. It's a higher aspect um that is communicating with you from a higher frequency, so to
Yeah.
speak.
I agree with you. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about intuition, which is what I was mentioning. It's like, something will come through in that calm state, but then the mind will come in and then you'll pick it up as intuition. Oh no, that doesn't feel good. Or oh no, I have an intuitive feeling about that. But it wasn't your intuition, it was your ego.
Mm.
Intuition will
The
never
intuition was the thing that dropped it in, right? That's what I would say.
The intuition will never be in fear. It will always be in calm, certain surety. If you feel like, okay, let's say your intuition is saying, don't don't go that way, right? We've heard many people whose lives were saved because they followed their intuition. Well, the initial message always comes in calm surety, like no, not not contracted fear. That comes after. You know what I mean? So, what was the initial message that came through before the mind came in and added its little ego message? That's the intuition.
Yeah, it's the certainty and conviction, isn't it? Like you said before, and it is. It's that like it's fleeting as well. It's fleeting, isn't it? It's like it's just like rises and then goes. But then it's the ego that then makes a narrative out of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say I would say it only appears fleeting because the ego is coming in
Yeah,
and creating the clouds in front of it or on it.
true. I like that little ad. Amazing. Okay, well, I'm glad we got to share that, just to give a little bit more context around our experiences with it. So that's a wrap, and we will see you tomorrow.